Good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is our better nature. And I think so many of us have such big hearts that we put ourselves in situations often over and over again, being well-meaning, and then feel like we have suffered for being what we were thinking was good. And let's talk about that and talk about how intention meets reality. Anyway, before we get started, let's take a minute or two to just get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose. Hold it and imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs and flowing into your bloodstream and nourishing all your cells and all your organs. And as you exhale, exhale any tension, any stress. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose. This time, imagine sparkling white light lighting you up, every molecule, every electron, just electrifying, energizing, and bringing vitality and life and expanding you out into the world beyond. As you exhale, exhale any tension. And now let's just gently press our palms together and really softly rub your fingers against your palms to feel how delicious that is and to enjoy being physical right here, right now in this body. And welcome, it's Friday. And I think what we're going to do is close up the week with talking about how our better nature can sometimes get the best of us, and the power of really allowing yourself to be present to what is. I had a conversation with a client that was at the heart of this, or is at the heart of this topic. And the situation with this person was that they had someone in their lives due to a relationship with their partner that was really, they tried to befriend this person, but this person is not their friend. And I think that there are times in our lives when we, out of our good nature, try to befriend people who give us evidence that they are not our friend and that they do not hold the same values that we hold. And it's not a judgment. Someone doesn't have to be bad to not be our friend. You know, just not everybody mixes. Oil and water don't mix. So uh, we don't need to pursue relationships that are detrimental, and people that hold different values. So in this particular circumstance, it became clear over and over, actually, that this other person held very different values from the values that my client held. And so my client kept uh, putting themselves in a position to uh, reach out and try to trust this other person. And consistently, the other person wouldn't honor that trust in the way that my client had expected. And so we can interpret these circumstances in a bunch of different ways. We can interpret these circumstances as a betrayal, or we can look at these circumstances in a way that's objective and say, well, this is what the situation was. This is how that person responded. What is the information that I can take away from this? What can I observe about this? Instead of reacting to say this person betrayed me, the fact is that there was an assumption of some kind of loyalty or some kind of fealty with that person that perhaps was misplaced. And I know that a number of us see the gold inside other people, or see this possibility in other people, or look to create connection with other people. And sometimes those perspectives are misdirected. When we're looking and seeing the gold in someone else, what we're seeing is things that we value that that other person may not value. And it's not that our values are more valuable, our values are different. And to recognize without judgment that people are different and that we don't hold similar values all the time, and to take the clue from the information you're getting and to respond appropriately is a really important and really valuable skill. Good morning, Tammy, and good morning to everybody else who's here. Welcome, welcome. I'm really glad to see you here, Tammy. We're talking about our better nature and how we often really undermine ourselves through what we consider to be our better nature. And I'm speaking about this particularly in the context of relationships. And usually it shows up in ways where we see someone's behavior, we see their values or the way that they are acting, and we keep wanting them to be different than the way that they are. And I'm not talking about judging, I'm talking about observing. So to do the same thing over and over and expect a different result is kind of a definition for crazy, right? So, and at least it's denial, right? So there's a need in some of us to be liked and to be appreciated and to create harmony in situations where there may not be harmony to create, or it may not, that harmony may not look the way that you expect it to. But I had the occasion to have this very direct, no frills kind of conversation with this client, and recounted to her the story of the frog and the scorpion. And you may or may not be familiar with it. And if you are, I just warn you up front that I may destroy the story a bit. But the frog and the scorpion were in a pond, and the scorpion asked the frog to give the scorpion a ride across the pond. And the frog said, "No, you're a scorpion. You're going to sting me and kill me. And well, why would I do that?" And the scorpion said, "No, no, no. Why would I sting you and kill you? Because if I'm riding on your back, if I kill you, we both die." And so this logic appealed to the frog, and the frog said, "Okay, hop on." And they're partway across the pond, and the scorpion stings the frog, and they both drown. But before they drown, the frog has the opportunity to say to the scorpion, what is this? You said you wouldn't kill me because you wanted to get to the other side of the pond, and now here we're both going to die." And the scorpion says, "But I'm a scorpion." And so the thing is that we can trust people. Like when we say we can't trust somebody else, typically what we're talking about is that we can't trust them to hold the same values that we hold. That's really what we're saying. And what we're not saying is that we can trust them to be who they are. And in this particular situation with my client and this person that they were trying to befriend, and that they extended vulnerability to and trust to, the person that they were extending themselves to had already demonstrated reliably that their values were different, that their behavior was totally consistent, but this client was wanting this person to be something else and kept hoping that they would be something else, and therefore gave them more chances, and then ended up feeling violated and disappointed. And how many of us have gone through situations like that? Because we weren't paying attention. We've talked about this before, not paying attention to our gut, where we let our minds override and say, oh, but I should give this person another chance. And oh, but uh, I should turn the other cheek. And I'm not talking about being angry at the person that you're wanting to give another chance to. Good morning, good morning. I'm presuming that's Dido that just said hello. Welcome, welcome. As always, it's a delight to have you here. And I so appreciate your support every day. Um, so, so in hoping that somebody is going to behave differently than they have consistently behaved is, oh, Sue's in the house. Welcome, Sue. How awesome to have you here. And it looks like you might actually be here from YouTube. Is that true? That's pretty awesome. I'm delighted to have you here, Sue. Thank you. So we're talking about turning the other cheek and how our better nature sometimes actually gets us into a situation where we are in denial, and we end up getting hurt. And that looks like it's Dido here too. Welcome. And Diane Deagle, welcome to you as well. And you are here from YouTube. How cool is that? I think this is my first experience, Sue, with YouTube comments. This is awesome. And for those of you that are watching, I know that a lot of people are doing Facebook Lives and live presencing of themselves on social media and different platforms. And through Enlightened World Network, we're using this awesome technology called Restream. And Restream allows you to broadcast to all these different social media platforms all at the same time, and to see the comments from all those platforms at the same time, and actually even respond to them. I don't have the bandwidth to be responding to the comments as I'm talking to you, but that is a capability of the system. So now you're getting to see it in action. Just a sidebar for those of you that are looking to expand your social media presence. And good morning, Christina, and welcome back. It's delightful to have you here. And Sue says, how do we measure when to give people another chance? Well, I'm not saying don't give people another chance. What I am saying is be alert to the dynamic that felt like a violation the first time, right? So let's say you make an appointment with somebody and they show up late, and then you want to make another appointment, and you say to them, look, it's really important that you be on time. And what you get to do in your being with this situation is to maybe build in some time just in case that person's late again, or when they are, let's say they are, in this case, they're late again. And now you're more upset because you said, well, hey, look, it's really important that you be here on time, and they're not on time. So you're feeling like it's personal, where it's not necessarily personal. It's just who this person is. Clearly, they don't value punctuality in the same way that you do. And so we get to observe these things as feedback, and then decide what our behavior is going to be based on the observations that we're making. It doesn't have to be personal. We don't have to take it personally. So, but Christina says boundaries are so important. I agree. The thing about boundaries is that they are ours. They're not for somebody else. And when we talk about these boundaries, so in this situation, in the scenario that I was, hello and welcome and good afternoon. Hope, it's great to have you here from the UK. So glad you're here. So we're talking about boundaries and talking about, really, we're talking about expectations, right? Because when do we get disappointed? We get disappointed when we have expectations of others, and those expectations are often unconscious because they're driven by our values, which we're not even aware we're trying to impose in a given situation. So in this particular situation, my client requested a confidential conversation with this other person, who then went to her partner and communicated the content of their conversation. And the dynamic is that the my client's partner is really good friends with the person that my client was trying to befriend, and asked for this confidential conversation. So what actually happened, and has happened again and again and again, is that this person who is the friend of the client's partner clearly has greater loyalty to her friend, the partner, than she does to the client. And and she evidenced that behavior over and over and over again. So the client felt betrayed, where in fact there was all kinds of evidence and information that this would be the predictable behavior. So you can't get bent out of shape when people are who they are, and they are that way consistently. You can take it personally, but it's not personal. It's not personal. So Sue says, be alert to the dynamic that felt like a violation the first time. Were they late? We observed their behavior. What are our expectations of others? Thank you for that, Sue. Yes, exactly. We need to look at our own expectations. And we sometimes think, I'm being a good person because I'm going to give this person another chance. But at the same time that I'm giving them another chance, what I'm giving them a chance to do is to meet my expectations. And I might not even be conscious that I'm imposing my expectations on that person. So how is that a reflection of my being a good person? I'm giving you another chance to meet my expectations. So, I mean, it's another way to think about it, right? And Hope says we have to try not to have any expectations of anyone other than ourselves. And even the expectations of ourselves sometimes are really brutal. And we get to modify a lot of those. We've spoken about that this week, where, for instance, expecting myself to be a peak performer is an unfair expectation that makes that creates an opportunity for pretty consistent disappointment, right? Because I don't have the capacity to always be a peak performer, right? So when we talk about expectations, I think we get to bring them conscious. We always have expectations, but when we're aware of the expectations, then we can interact with them in a way that is more life affirming. So when I set an appointment with you, and it's the first time that we've had an appointment, I have an expectation that you're going to show up. We're setting an agreement. I have an expectation that you're going to keep that agreement. And if you don't show up, then maybe there's a reason that I consider valid. Like if you had to rush to the hospital with somebody and you had an emergency and you didn't get back to me, I consider that that's a valid reason, in my lexicon, in my boundaries. To go back to what Christina said, within my boundaries, that is a reason, that is a justifiable reason for not showing up. Okay. And then the next time, and the next time, and the next time, if there's one emergency after another, then I can evaluate my relationship to this person who has a life filled with incredible emergencies. And the I get to evaluate what works for me in terms of my involvement with them. Now, we think, well, this is where expectations of ourselves can present problems. I'm a good person, and therefore, as a good person, there are actually rules, right? There are rules that we have that maybe not be conscious. So as if I believe that I'm a good person, then one of the rules that I might have is that I should be giving people another chance, that I should be always turning the other cheek. When someone violates you, and here again, violation is an assessment. It's a judgment, right? Because we have different thresholds. We have different boundaries, to go back to what you were saying, Christina. So when my boundaries are violated, I get to look at what my expectations were, what my boundaries were, whether this is a deal breaker. If I'm in a relationship and somebody hits me, that for me is a deal breaker. I don't need to give them another chance. And it's easy for me to say that right now because I'm not in that situation. And in that situation, potentially there might be a mitigating circumstance where I might give that person another chance. However, we all have different boundaries. I could be in a place where I'm saying, this was a really extraordinary, unusual circumstance. This person is incredibly remorseful. And, you know, it was a conflagration of events that would never ever happen again. Perhaps there might be an extenuating circumstance, but the thing is, we get to see patterns of behavior. And if I did choose to stay in that situation, and that person hit me again, then for me personally, that's a deal breaker. That's the end of it. And I know I know that we find ourselves in situations where we say, I'm going to forgive them. I'm going to forgive them. I'm going to understand. We all have different capacities for that level of understanding, or for modifying our boundaries. For me, I don't believe we have an obligation to tolerate physical abuse. And if you're listening to this and you are experiencing physical abuse, I truly, deeply have compassion for you and encourage you to find some kind of support to move you out of that situation, because you don't deserve it. And I'm just going to stick my neck out here and say that. So please find yourself support to be able to move out of that situation, because you do not deserve to be treated that way. Um, and so what we end up doing is saying, yes, but this person, it means well, and yes, but they are remorseful, and yes, on and on and on. And the consequence is that we then allow ourselves to remain in a situation with an expectation for change that is not a reasonable expectation. And people do announce who they are. People do show who they are. And under the guise of being good people, we often choose to ignore what we're being shown. And I can say that this is something that when I was a lot younger, I experienced giving people chances again and again and again, but not realizing that I was expecting them to be someone other than who they are. And so Christina says abuse is never okay. I agree. I agree. Abuse is not okay. And there may be moments where someone just loses it, and that's and I'm not talking about hitting somebody or I'm talking about just where there might be a screaming argument, for instance. And different people have different thresholds for what we define as abuse. And that's part of the challenge with navigating these expectations. If we've grown up with abuse, the likelihood is that we either have a much greater aversion to it and any inkling of it than than people who haven't grown up with it, or or we have a threshold for accepting abuse that's much greater than people who haven't been abused. And so this is a really, really um, interesting conversation, and it's not a black and white. Unfortunately, it's not a black and white issue. For me, it may be less gray than for others. What is emotional abuse? How do you know? Where's the line for emotional abuse? A number of us, I'm sure, have grown up with physical abuse and mental abuse and sexual abuse, and as a result of that, we have different thresholds and different ways of interacting where like our abuse detector is very different from person to person. And some people will undergo what I would consider horrific abuse without defining it as abuse. And so is it for me to say that's an abusive environment? What I could say to this client in the situation that they were in was, this person is not your friend. Do not behave with this person as if they are your friend. And you don't have to hate this person. You don't have to make this person wrong for not being your friend, but observe the behavior. Do not put yourself in a position where you make yourself vulnerable to this person. Do not extend trust to this person to to value your interests, because they are not connected with you in that way. And this is an important thing for us to recognize. This client considers herself a very good person. In fact, they are a very good person. And and the inclination was to be forgiving, to keep extending. But the thing is, it's not, it doesn't make, it's not rational. It's not rational. And I think you get to look at um, a zebra being a zebra, a scorpion being a scorpion, and recognize that not that this person is necessarily bad, but that your values are different. that your values are different, and as such, your behaviors are different. And you cannot reasonably expect somebody who has different values from you to be behaving in a way that is consistent with your values, and to keep hoping and extending the opportunity for that person to quote unquote violate you or violate your values when you already know that they are coming from a different place is lunacy, right? It's not being a good person. Uh it's being delusional in a certain way. And I think that this whole notion of being a good person sometimes allows us to nurture this delusion of around the human dynamic. Now, I'm not saying vilify somebody. I'm saying like this client still is in a position to have some kind of interaction with this other person that that holds a very different system of values. There's no reason to not be courteous. The client can be courteous or not, but it's important for the client to maintain awareness of their behavior, their expectation in the context of this other person who really does not feel any particular connection with the client. So this is interesting and sort of uh delicate ground, right? Because we do get to look at our identities, at the ideas that we're holding of ourselves, right? We're saying I'm a good person and people always take advantage of me. I've seen that happen over and over and over. I've worked with so many people who are um, really, really well-meaning healers and generous of heart and spirit, and feel like they get taken advantage of over and over and over again. I can't tell you how many people I've spoken to who say, I give and give and give, and I get taken advantage of all the time. Well, it's time to reevaluate what that giving is about and who you're giving to, and how this violation or is occurring and how you're getting taken advantage of. And so Christina says it isn't vilifying anyone. It's saying I'm worthy of better. I love and respect myself too. Exactly, Christina. What it is coming into a deeper sense of self-worth and self value. Christina says, and self-love can be hard. It can because we're brought up with a lot of ideas about our worth oftentimes. And the thing that I'm saying, it's the same thing that we do to others, we do to ourselves, or what we do to ourselves, we do to others. So if I say, um, I got angry, therefore I'm a bad person. That we talked about this yesterday, conflating different ideas that really have no business being together, right? So I'm a good person means I'm going to forgive somebody. You can forgive somebody and still be smart enough to say, I'm not going to do that again. I'm not going to put myself in that position again. So without, like you said, Christina, without vilifying anybody, I can say, I love myself enough to know that, to read the signals. And it doesn't make me a bad person to steer clear of this other person. And that perhaps it is self-love. Perhaps it is self-love enough to say, I don't have to subject myself to that. And it doesn't have to be out of anger. It can just be out of um, this situation is painful, or this situation is detrimental, or this situation is even better than that. This situation is out of alignment with who I am, right? Or my values. I'm not going to compromise myself. So when we keep getting taken advantage of, we're putting ourselves in situations where there's a misalignment, right? We're either going into that situation with in denial of the way things really are, or with hopeful expectations that are misplaced. Or, it's like I keep giving and giving and giving and I get taken advantage of. Well, what's the expectation? So many people in giving are trying to win love, right? And if I'm giving and giving and giving, and I'm not having any reciprocity, and maybe I'm just maybe I just love giving and I'm not having any expectation. And then I don't feel like I'm taken advantage of because I'm just enjoying giving. But so many of us give with an expectation of reciprocity, with an expectation of return of something, with an intention or an expectation that I'm going to get something back. I might get love, I might get things, I might get connections. It's like I'll make a distinction between giving because you're choosing to give or giving because you want something in return. Okay. And then if you don't get that thing that, and I'm not saying it's not okay to give with an expectation of reciprocity, because that's pretty much how we operate. I wash your back, you wash mine, right? So when we give with an expectation of reciprocity and we don't get that reciprocity, then we get to choose, do we still want to be in, if we still have that expectation of reciprocity, then we get to choose, is this a good place to put my attention? Is this a good place to give? If what I want is reciprocity and I'm not getting that, instead of keep continuing to give and give and give and then feeling more and more resentful, right? Because that person is indicating their values. They're indicating who they are. They're indicating, hey, I'm a zebra, or I'm a scorpion, or I'm a whatever. And I'm not saying that a scorpion is worse than a zebra or vice versa, right? So Christina says, sometimes it's easier for me to step out of myself and give a look at the situation as a kind, loving friend and advise accordingly. That, Christina, is brilliant. Absolutely. And when we talk about meta levels, a meta perspective, that's exactly what you're doing. You're sort of removing yourself from the situation and observing it as a more neutral observer. And then potentially you can see things more clearly than when you're in the midst and in the emotional turmoil of it. So anyway, it sounds we've covered a lot of ground here, and this is really about not letting your better nature take advantage of you or get you into trouble. So by this identity, and we've talked about how identities can constrict us and sort of lock us into behaviors that are not necessarily the most positive. This definition, we would think, a definition of I'm a good person is a great definition to have. And what we get to look at is the rules that we carry along with those identities. If I'm a good person, I have this certain code of conduct. And what is that code of conduct? And if it is turning the other cheek, how many times do you do that? And without saying, guess what? I'm not going to put my cheek in that position again. It doesn't mean that that other person that behaved that way is bad. I mean, you may have judgments about that, but it does mean that there is a misalignment of values. And so pay attention to what other people are telling you. Now, so I remember when I was growing up, it went so far as I think I had somebody say, "Oh, I'm not a good person," and my response was, "Oh, yes, you are." And instead of listening to this person saying, I'm not a good person, who's announcing to me I'm not a good person, then I could, if I challenged that, if my perception was different, because I always wanted to see the best in everybody, if my perception were different, well, I could explore that a little bit more thoroughly to say, well, what is it that makes you say that? And then if they're telling me all these things, I get to listen because they know themselves better than I do. And I get to then choose whether that's the place that I want to be. And I know for me, and probably for a whole bunch of us, at least for me years ago, I wanted to save people from themselves. And so Lillian says she got a phone call. Well, I'd love you to see the replay, and thank you for joining us. But what I was wrapping up with is that here somebody would tell me they weren't a good person. Somebody would just lay it out for me, and I was like, oh, no, no, no. Oh no, you're a good person. And part of me wanted to convert them to, or to help them or to save them. And what I was doing is I was denying what was there. I mean, what they told me. And I was ignoring the red flags. And then when I got hurt, I was devastated. But I paid attention in the beginning, had I listened, had I not been in denial, I would have behaved differently. And perhaps I wouldn't have put myself in the situation where I would have gotten hurt in the first place. And this was all based on me believing that I was serving my better nature. And so so Lillian says I was that way too, right? And so what happens is we don't have to make other people wrong. It's like, oh, okay, if somebody's telling me there's a serial killer, maybe I don't want to hang out with them, right? And obviously nobody's ever told me that there's a serial killer, but I mean, we do get information, we do get evidence, and when somebody doesn't like us immediately, oftentimes we try to make them like us. And, you know, part of that is because maybe we have our own insecurities about not being liked. But so Lillian said, I always wanted to see the best in everyone and ended up disappointed. We get to see what's there. And I know that for me, when years ago, I used to project all the goodness. I would look only for the goodness in people. And why not just see people as they are? See people as they are. We all have our faults. We all have our strengths and our weaknesses. We all have our goodness. And then we get to recognize that the way that we're perceiving these other people is through our values and our projections. And so when somebody does something that feels like a violation, it's just clearly that they're existing in a different perspective or a different paradigm, a different structure than we are, right? And so it doesn't make you a bad person to see what's there, to read the signals and to be responsive to them in a way that is respectful of you, and realize that when you feel disappointed, it's because you had an expectation that wasn't met, and that other person may or may not have agreed to fulfill that expectation. It may have never been visible. So Lillian says, today I've learned my lesson and I give them love anyway if they are bad to me. But when I just share my love and I end up happy and they can be their way, I choose to be good anyway. That's me. Exactly. Well, we're not talking about not giving them love. You can give them love anyway and choose not to be in that situation again, not to put yourself in a situation where you're going to be treated badly, right? We get to choose about that. And if I keep putting myself back in a situation over and over where I keep getting treated badly, that's on me. That's on me. That's not about them, because they've already told you who they are. They've already told you how they're going to behave. And you keep going back for more, that's on you. It's on me if I do that, right? Because I'm not paying attention, or I'm not valuing myself enough. And maybe there are situations, okay, here's situations in families where certain people treat you poorly over and over, and you don't get to just leave because you have a higher value to say, I'm gonna maintain my relationship with this person. And I hear you, Lillian. And I've had experience like that as well. So there are situations where you just can't leave. And when we realize that they are who they are, then we don't have the expectation that they're going to act differently. So they act how they act, and I don't have to take it personally. Right, Lillian? So if you're not being treated well, you know that they're going to do what they're going to do, and it's really not about you, and you don't have to take it personally, right? You don't have to say, I expect them to be different, because you don't. You're interacting with them as they are. And I have situations like that in my life too. And just to be able then to be loving in that situation and say they are how they are. I'm not expecting them to be different. And that way they can't disappoint me and they can't really hurt me, because I'm not expecting them to behave differently, right? And so blessings to you, Lillian, for being able to be present to the love that you are in that very challenging, difficult situation. Yes, when you stop having expectations of those people in your life that disappoint or that hurt again and again, then you you don't get hurt. So, wow, big stuff today. Really, really, really powerful. And I thank you for engaging as vulnerably as you have. Um, I think the thing that we get to give ourselves permission to do is to see what's there and to act accordingly, you know, and to make our decisions accordingly. So uh, as we do that, we honor ourselves, and frankly, we honor the other people that we're interacting with, because we're not imposing our our expectations on them, right? Anyway, And not to say, just before I wrap up, I just want to say that we do get to enter into agreements saying, hey, here are my expectations. Are you agreeing to meet those? So that we can be conscious about that as well. And then we're exposing those rules, and then we get to play with how people interact with those boundaries that we establish. So I'm glad that this was valuable, Lillian. I hope, rather. I'm glad you found it to be a good session. And Lillian says, people ask me how I can be so loving to bad people. Well, I do my best to see them in my eyes as love. And Lillian, that's a beautiful thing, to be able to be loving. It's a gift, and uh, it lights up the world. And to be loving when it tears you apart is a different story. I'm not getting that that's how it is for you. I'm getting that you really are deeply connected to your heart, and to be able to be that expression of love. So blessings to you. That's really, really powerful. And um, Sue says, we give people another chance to meet our expectations when they know what our expectations are. But if they don't meet them, we get to then choose. We don't get to necessarily make them wrong for not meeting our expectations. If they agree to and then they don't keep the agreement, then that's a whole other story. So Lillian says, I share love and I always use love in all situations, and that is good. You know what? That is the best. That is the best. Coming from a place of love is something that is a worthy place to aspire to if we're not there, and to remember as we go through life, and to embody as much as we possibly can. So thank you guys. This was amazing, and lots and lots of love to you. And this is the end of the week. So have a wonderful weekend. This is the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin. I'm here every weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern on the Enlightened World Facebook page. And check out the programming over the weekend, because it's always awesome. And until next week, lots and lots of love to you. And Lillian says, love heals everything. On that note, much love.